And if we have any interest, which obviously we do, in the spiritual life, and any yearning for transcendental experience, that's where the mind goes. It can't go anywhere else. It goes along the path of the jhanas. And very often, when I speak about them, people will afterwards say, oh, but I've been doing that. I didn't know it was the jhanas. Others will say, oh, I did that when I was 6 years old. Didn't know that I should do that again. If you remember, the Buddha did it when he was 12. He went to the plowing festival with his father, and then couldn't be found, was sitting under a tree, and obviously was meditating. And when he came then into the forest to his first teacher and was taught the jhanas, he remembered that when he was sitting under that tree at the plowing festival, he had been doing them. This is not uncommon. Small children do them automatically, not all of them obviously, but some. And when one comes back to it, in one's grown-up life, one remembers that one has actually done them. If you read the Christian mystics of the Middle Ages, who are most interesting, you will find that they were doing exactly the same thing. Teresa d'Avila explained the jhanas as 7 chambers. Well, we've got 8. And all her language was very visionary and, of course, Christian-orientated, but was exactly the same thing. Francisco de Osuna, who was her teacher, explained them more pragmatically. Meister Eckhart did them in a different terminology. This is an interesting aspect because they also got lost in Christianity. I've met quite a number of Carmelite nuns who are bemoaning the fact that while they're reading the instructions of Teresa d'Avila, the interior castle, instructions to her nuns, nobody tells them how to do it. We are living in a technological age, and the whole climate of our society is not geared towards the interior being, but there's more and more interest in it, and having put on the robes, obviously that's what we're after. When people say, and it is being said over and over again, they're not necessary. The question is, why did the Buddha do them? There's no argument about it. We also know from our own personal experience that if our meditation does not become calm and peaceful, does not bring about a different state of consciousness, we're not satisfied. We do it because it's part and parcel of the tradition. It belongs to our daily schedule, but it doesn't bring what it could bring. It's not difficult. Every human mind can do it. Every meditator can do it. Some people take longer, some can do it quicker. But everyone can do it. If the instructions are there, and they are there from the Buddha, there's no reason why one shouldn't do it. One first has to get over that hurdle of that it's unnecessary, and one can have passing fruit by just noting. I don't know whether one can have passing fruit by just noting. It's a personal opinion when I say I doubt it. But, as I say, it's a personal opinion, so the truth is nothing. But the jhanas are the way to have a different mind state. Now, the path moment is a mind moment, but the jhanas are mind states. And that's a big difference. Because a mind moment obviously lasts a moment, but mind states imbue the mind with a different level of consciousness. Now, this different level of consciousness has a residual effect in daily life. I'm now going to outline the practicalities of the jhanas. Watching the breath is the key. We have to have a method. And the method is the key. Of course, there are other methods. If you remember, in the Satipatthana Sutta, there are 40 different methods. But let's just assume we're using the breath, which most of us probably do. It's a key. Now, in order to open a door, we have to have the key in hand long enough and steady enough to stick it into the keyhole. That's what we're trying when we are trying to stay on the breath. And once more, I like to repeat, if there is excess upachara, neighborhood concentration, which one would assume there is, it needs just a little more willpower to let go and to fall into the breath. What happens when there is apana, full concentration? The breath becomes very fine. In fact, it can become so fine that one can't find it. If one is not a skilled meditator, one takes a deep breath and gets back to the key with which one has fiddled already all the time, instead of letting go of the key, opening the door and going over the threshold. So if the breath becomes very fine, it's hard to find not to take a deep breath, but to drop the attention on the breath and put the attention on one's inner sensation. The inner sensation at that time is piti, the Pali piti, not the English piti. And piti is the lightful sensation. Now in the scriptures we find 17 different kinds of piti. There are probably more. The most common ones. Lightness of body, a feeling of floating. Warmth, not heat, warmth. A tingling all through the body. A losing of the boundaries of the body. A totally different body feeling. Now, obviously, we don't meditate in order to get a totally different body feeling. But that's the first chamber. In order to get to the others, we have to walk through that one. That's number one. And actually, in the discourse, in the Anguttara Nikaya, which I mentioned earlier, the Buddha did say that one can get passion fruit even after the first jhana, which is not common, because the first jhana is still a little exciting, especially if one isn't used to it. If it should happen for the first time, the response in the mind is usually, hey, what's this? And that finishes that meditation. Unfortunately, the response in the mind often is, I want it back. That doesn't work. Whatever we want in meditation doesn't work. We have to let go. But being somewhat skilled at meditation, we sit down without wanting and just concentrating. And then we will find that we can go across that threshold into our inner being and experience a totally different kind of body feeling. Now, as we sit now, the body is heavy, and it has a definite outline. We know exactly where it begins and ends, and it isn't altogether pleasant either. It may be neutral, but if we paid attention to it, which we might not do at the moment because we want to pay attention to what's being said, but if we paid attention to it, we would find it isn't all that pleasant. It just is. It just is a body. But in the first jhana, it becomes a totally different kind of feeling. And as we experience that, any one of those sensations which I have mentioned, or something else, which is utterly pleasant, utterly delightful, we need to stay with that long enough so that we have a real experience of it. Also, because simultaneous with the delightful sensation arises joy, inner joy, sukha. And although at that time the body feeling predominates, because the body does predominate over the emotion, we have to be with it long enough so that the joy becomes established. It's impossible to have this delight within without having joy. It's a natural companion to it. There are 5 factors of this jhana: vitaka, vichara, piti, sukha, and ekagata. Initial application, continued application, delightful sensation, joy, and one-pointedness. The first 2, or the first 3, are in succession. But the other 3 are within us together. We have to be one-pointed. And the joy is there, together with the delightful feeling. If we do it properly, which means that we don't deviate from the attention on that delightful sensation and stay with it for, let's say, something like 10 minutes. We don't look on the watch, of course, or the clock, but it's a solid chunk of time. The Buddhist instructions are to deliberately let go of that delightful feeling because we know that it's still gross and there must be something which is more subtle than that. We drop our attention on that delightful feeling and the whole attention goes to the emotion, to the joy. Emotion is a little more subtle, a little finer, a little more elevated than the physical feeling. Joy is the second jhana. Interestingly enough, many Westerners find that one particularly difficult. It is very strongly connected to loving kindness, and also it is strongly connected to being at ease with oneself. Inner joy is something that most Westerners have great difficulty with. We must never